Why is there a game on Friday?
In Brazil too, and there's wicked wildfires, so now they don't even know if it's going to be good. I don't know. I haven't seen it in a couple of days, but
That's suspicious.
we'll see. Hey, good morning. Football is back. It's Christmas for adults. I mean, it really is at this stage of the game. I guess for Ben here, it's college or football as well. But I mean, what an overlap we've got going. Get me off of baseball. Jeez. The thing about this is that it takes so long to get here. And then by the time you blink, it's over. So we're going to enjoy this ride, fellas. It's football week 1. And I feel like we've had more movement as far as players, personnel, coaching, defensive players. So a lot to dive into. 12 games, not 13, not 14. That's even better. You get 12 games because you got, as Ben mentioned, the Friday game, a Thursday game, a Sunday night game, and a Monday night game. We're here, baby. Dave Loughran, Ben Rasa running it back for what is this? The
15th year.
Right? I mean, we were doing stuff at FanVice, but here 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, is this our 7th year doing this together?
So yeah, you would figure by random chance we should get some stuff right today, which is nice. This always happens in week 1. I'm not saying I'm not excited, but I do get a head start on most because I've been in college football started 2 weeks ago, full college football on Saturday. So I've been in a little football mode, but there's no doubt that the NFL, it's the NFL, man. Enough said. There's just so much. I have been just scouring this slate from the moment it came up. I'm so excited to finally talk about it. So many changes, so many moves, and it's finally here. We finally get to actually make some decisions.
Yeah. Shark Killer said, I hope they double the Monday night games with the West Coast. I wish they would do that every single week.
They should do that.
An East Coast and a West Coast game every week. Give me a 7 and a 10. You know, nobody's going to be happier than me, than us. It's going to be a good time. Very happy to have you guys with us. So happy. Man, officially back. So I guess it's high time for me to ask you to atone for your sins this wonderful Tuesday morning and hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. You're watching, listening after the fact. I know a lot of you guys will roll in after the fact later, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. Long shelf life here. And if you're listening on Twitter or on X, we see you out there. What's up, everybody? Very happy to be here. We're talking football. And the first thing we dive into before anything for week 1, for those of you who are new, first of all, welcome. Maybe it's your first time discovering this show on the Stochastic YouTube channel. Good shit. You can find us in podcast form as well. Otherwise, if you've been here, you know, last year we ranked these teams by tiers, and the tier names were egregious, okay? Every single week. And then, of course, we had the Goblin of the Week presented by first Nathaniel Hackett and then Brandon Staley. So you can see where this is going. We will take a quick look at that. Then we'll get into everything we need to know for week 1. But we have to set the table for a long, prosperous, and also hopefully entertaining NFL season. Do we have the official tier list from last year, Jordan? Okay, here you go. So what we had was a combination of insanity. First off, Super Bowl contenders we had. Now we ended with the Chiefs down at playoff team because I think they just weren't a particularly high scoring team. We don't need to get into all of this. San Fran, we were right. They got there. We should have known Baltimore. Every time they get into the playoffs, they stink. The ones I want to talk about, and I think you need to take a single second to explain these, refresh the memories of those out there, or help the new people out. Maybe next year is easy. Fringe playoff team, Super Bowl favorites. All of that is easy, right? What is Bizarro Freak Show? What is the Chikings? We know what No Bueno is. And then there's Fire Them Into the Sun. And by the way, do you see where I ranked the Eagles? At Fire Into the Sun. Oh, there's DeVito Goblin.
That's true. So, yeah, there's a lot going on here. So the Saints are the Saints. They are just a freak show. They got a lot going on. They had no identity all year. They belonged in their own category. The Chargers and the Vikings, they are just teams that there's no correlation between how they play and what's going to happen. Sometimes they look amazing. Sometimes they look awful, just like the Raiders, just like the Falcons, just like the Broncos, and they all ended the same. Where it's like, who knows? Were they good or bad? No one really knows. The Titans and the Cardinals, not much to say. I don't know even how the Eagles, you put them down there. I guess they did deserve it
They
at the
went
end
like
there.
1-6 down the stretch.
Yeah, it was
Lost
bad.
outright to Arizona, lost outright to the Giants. They belonged there for sure.
And then the DeVito Goblin, which was just a Shang Tsung-esque situation where basically if he beats you, no matter what you were relegated down there. So like the Packers were a good team and they're a serious contender and they were a playoff team, but they also were relegated down there. So I'm sure this year we're going to have some crazy new categories. It's just the way it is. We will let it come to us, but that's how the season ended and I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah, if Tommy DeVito beat you, you ended up there. Chikings, let me be clear here. If you ended up in Chikings category, the reason we called it it was Chargers and Vikings. They're just, teams that could look great, could look terrible. Brandon Staley's gone. But if you ended up there, you were not allowed out for the remainder of the season.
Because you shouldn't, because it doesn't matter. That's the whole point of the category. Because it's like, oh, they've won 3 straight. They're making a move. No, that's just what those teams do all the time. They for no reason look good and then they just absolutely do nothing. Someone from that category is going to make a move this year. I just don't know who it's going to be.
All right, clear them out, Jordan. We start new, clean slate.
Yeah.
And we'll have to create some new tiers for next season or for this season. Like DeVito Goblins can't be there.
No, not at all. It'll all be, we didn't, those categories, we didn't choose them, they chose us.
Yep.
And that
Vikings can't even be there because
no.
Harbaugh's a good coach. I don't anticipate anything like that.
No, definitely not. It might be, I can't even begin to imagine. That's the beauty of it.
So we'll play it on the fly.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. DeVito Goblin of the Week, or I'm sorry, Goblin of the Week presented by Brandon Staley, formerly Nathaniel Hackett. You guys in chat, you as well, Ben. If you had to set a prediction, all of you, set a prediction for one coach who ends up being the presenter of the Goblin of the Week award, which just means terrible coaching mistakes, terrible all-around coaching. No surprise that Hackett and Staley are gone. So you and I were there from the jump. You said you would have fired Nathaniel Hackett in his first game last year against the Seattle Seahawks.
And I would have been right.
You would have been right. Or was that 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago, but
because
the point still stands.
Sean Payton.
Arthur Smith, all these people.
Arthur Smith. If you had to pick one coach who you could see being that guy this year, for me, I feel like I have to go Nick Sirianni.
First comment in chat was Nick Sirianni. I'll stay in the division. I'll go Mike McCarthy.
Okay. Or Dennis Allen. I mean, Dennis Allen's just bad, but not egregious in the sense that like he makes awful decisions that stand. You know what I mean? He doesn't make these crazy polarized decisions. He's just bad for 60 minutes.
Yeah. So that's a whole nother like category where I don't even blame the coach. I just blame these teams I was just talking about this last night, and I'm not even going to take a shot at Bill O'Brien because A, they won, and B, but it's like, okay, the variance on some of these coaches that have coached like 9 different plays, like you just know what you're getting. Why not? I'm always team do something weird. And I think Mike McCarthy epitomizes that with the Cowboys. Like if it goes bad once again, which it probably will, just like what are you doing at this point? But it's a long year. Maybe someone will emerge from the shadows and see what goes on. Yeah, Dan
Mike
Campbell,
McCarthy's
maybe.
big thing is letting Dak Prescott call the plays in the preseason.
Cool.
So
that's big. Great.
You could be right. You ready to talk some football?
Talk some football.
And by the way, guys, I'll mention it another time throughout the show, but figured you would want to know. If you see that link in the description, NFL Core Weekly or Core Weekly Weekly, someone put that in there wrong. $1 for the entirety of the first week, every single tool, single lineup sim, ownership, player projections, underdog prize or underdog and prize picks builder, I think essentially the only limitation on that, Ben, is that with the DFS lineup, the pre-contest simulator and the contest generator, it's up to 1,000 lineups, but which is still in one single dollar, everything for $1. So when you're looking at this, you're talking, I mean, essentially anything you need. DraftKings Pick Six Optimizer, Underdog, Prize Picks, NFL Lineup Generator, player projections, ownership projections, single lineup sim, post-contest simulator, late swap simulator, boom bust tool, top stacks tool, ownership projections. I already said that. NFL contest generator, pre-contest generator, everything. One single dollar. So if you've ever been on the fence, if you ever, watched the shows and been like, I want to check these tools out, I'm waiting for the right moment, here is the time. Link is in the description. Link is in the chat. The light version and the core version are $1. Go with the core version because you're getting more for the same price. And I'll add one more thing. It's every slate for week 1, but this week is a novelty, Ben, because you have Friday. So you have Thursday showdown. It's going to be what, $1 million up top or what? Friday, Sunday early, Maine, afternoon, Sunday night football, Monday night football. Our contest generator, simulator, single lineup sim cover all of the turbo slates as well. All of this, just essentially everything for a single $1. Can't beat it, dude.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not much to say. Look at the value of what these packages are on a normal week, and you're paying $1. So it's like, I can't even do those discounts in my head. You're talking about something that's $30 a week. And I think that that's a great deal throughout. You get it for $1 to try it out. And
yep,
you have a lot of great tools. There's no doubt. The single lineup simulator is my favorite tool that we've ever developed, ever. Full stop.
It's like it was built for you.
It is built. It's literally built for me. I'm not someone that loves to play 150. I do on occasion, but very rarely. I like to hone in on 3 max. I like to really honestly spend some time on a lineup, like more art than science. And of course, I'm using our tools, but that's what that tool is. It combines the best of both worlds, where I can literally take my lineup, put it in there, and then refine it slowly, and try to really build one that I'm super confident in. It's a game changer. You'll see it, obviously, because I'm assuming most people are going to be inside the ropes at least for the first week because you're paying $1. But I'm really, really excited to see how it shakes out for this.
Let's go, baby. Yeah, and link in the description and in chat. Check it out. Anyway, let's get into it. Quarterbacks, week 1. Here we are. Finally there. Okay, so first things first. I'm looking at the top tier, the mid tier, and the lower tier. This is how we do the first look show. We get a little bit more into the weeds as we go further throughout the week. We do have the luxury of having, all of the data updated already for week 1. Normally on Tuesdays, that won't be the case, right? It'd be silly for us to do that. There's way too much going on, too many moving parts. But looking at it now, there are a few guys up top at quarterback, as we'll go tier, highest tier, mid tier, low tier, but for every position. There are a few guys that really stand out to me up top. And really the first one, man, Josh Allen. I know he lost Diggs. I know he lost Gabe Davis. I'm not sure I care. And you think about it, you have Khalil Shakir. I don't know what we're going to get out of Keon Coleman out of the gate. And Curtis Samuel's dealing with turf toe, so that's something to pay attention to. But he actually seemed to be building a pretty solid rapport with Josh Allen. And you have, of course, Dalton Kincaid. None of these guys are expensive. So the biggest question for me then becomes, how popular is a Bills stack going to be when you can play Josh Allen with a $5,800 Kincaid and then no receiver north of $5,100?
That's the thing that's jumped out to me when I was reviewing this, is that when you look at Josh Allen, you're like, okay, yeah, maybe do I want to pay up? Traditionally, I'm not a huge advocate of paying up at quarterback. He's more expensive than everyone else. But then you see the weapons, and then you average down that salary immediately. Almost every situation this year, the highest priced quarterback, when you look to them, their stack is going to be a $9,000 receiver or an $8,500.
Stroud.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's he's another example of that. But even that, look at Houston, Nico Collins, those type of players. Obviously, if Tua was up there, or whatever's going on in Dallas. Like these are big receivers. You just don't have that in Buffalo. You're talking about maybe a skinny stack with a tight end. You're talking about an unknown on the outside, and also maybe that just makes Josh Allen say, you know what, I'm going to be a little more aggressive on the ground early, and that's not going to hurt us at flat 8. So it's hard to argue with Josh Allen. I'm a big Josh Allen guy. We didn't get into the matchup. Certainly don't fear the Cardinals. It's all systems go if you have the money.
It is all systems go. Cardinals could have the worst secondary in football this year.
They're just going to be bad. I don't know. I know there's some I've seen some tepid optimism. I'm not one of those people.
I would say this much. It's them or Washington, but at least Washington brought Dan Quinn in. That Washington secondary last year was terrible. Like my best call was the Atlanta Falcons stack that ended up being in the Millie Maker winning lineup.
Yep. I remember that.
Wish it was mine. And I'm almost positive that was against Washington, because our whole play every week was just play quarterbacks against Washington, play their deep threat with the quarterbacks, because, you had Forbes, but the whole secondary, they couldn't prevent the deep ball. Like every week you're talking 30, 40, 50-yard touchdowns. This could be bad. And I think Arizona could be a real problem defensively this year. Josh Allen looks good. So does CJ Stroud. But that's what I'm saying is, you talk about what are we looking for, like for receivers when it comes to CJ Stroud. It's a good matchup. Indy gave up a ton of explosive plays last year. I think third most in football. Just really bad. But you have Nico, you have Diggs, you have Tank Dell, 7K, 67, and 5,500 respectively. Dalton Schultz at 4,900, but how involved is he going to be? If you're like, this feels like one of these stacks where it's a great spot. They have a nice implied total. It's a fine-tuned machine on offense. How do you differentiate with these guys? Are you just being like, all right, I'm going to plug and play or mix and match with these type of options?
I think it's more that I'm not probably as high on Houston in general. This is more of a macro, and we'll talk about a little betting throughout the show. Like I'm not super sold that the Texans are going to be as good as everybody thinks, but that's not really relevant to this per se. It's a blessing and a curse. There are certain teams when we talk about their quarterback, you basically know that the wide receiver is almost preloaded into the stack. You can leverage within Houston stacks because there's a lot of different combinations of who Stroud could ultimately be paired with in a really powerful lineup. And so that makes it tough because you could get the team right and the stack wrong. But on the flip side, it's nice because if you're in a tournament with other Houston stacks, you probably have some differentiation points. I think the wild card though is Mixon some type of very aggressive bell cow? Is he just a complementary piece to this now prolific offense? I think these are the questions that we don't have answers to just yet.
It's kind of tough because Mixon could also be in a great spot.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Mixon could be in a really good spot. It's a tough game. One thing I love doing, and I know you're with me on this, is on concentrated offenses. I like going running back, wide receiver without the quarterback. Remember how many times that won tournaments last year?
Absolutely. We talked about it a lot early, particularly like Miami when Mostert was going just absolutely nuts and you didn't need Tua. You wanted
my best finishes on the season were, in either the spy or the was it 50 and the 100, the spy and the red zone, the two big single entry ones.
Yep.
Were with that build. And one of them was Puka and Kyron Williams. Because you didn't need Stafford.
And the theme already, we only just talked about a couple examples. What are the themes though? You have statue quarterbacks. Like Stafford gives you nothing outside of the connection to his big time weapons. Tua gives you nothing outside of that. And that's something that as the scoring picks up in the league, your quarterback could throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns and he still gets lapped by someone that has 60 yards and a touchdown on the ground and a couple of touchdowns elsewhere.
And CJ Stroud also not one of those guys that's going to take off a lot. The problem is if you're going, Mixon plus Collins, it's just so easy that it ends up being Diggs and Mixon or Dell and mixing, or not mixing at all.
That's the blessing and a curse of Houston. You're going to be able to leverage within the team, but there's nothing more frustrating than targeting Houston stacks, having them put up 40 points, and you don't hit your stack because it just wasn't the right combination of players. So for that reason, to kind of bring it back, I'm not saying I don't like CJ Stroud, but I would prefer Josh Allen over Stroud in week 1.
So would I. And I don't want to stay on this too long, but I'll ask you this. If you remember last year, the Millie Maker winning lineup, actually, I think that was a sub. One of our was Short Gamer TV. I think he won with the 3-man Houston stack.
I mean, Houston was crushing some of those weeks. Yeah.
He either won it with that or with Dallas, but there was a week where we had a sub take down something massive. I think it was a Millie with a 3-man Houston stack. And it was, here's the difference. It was Collins. I believe it was Dell. It might have been Schultz. And I think it was Noah Brown as well. It wasn't Robert Woods.
That checks out because I was playing Robert Woods a lot last year. So,
well, if you remember, Noah Brown had a few absolute blow up games.
Yeah, monster games.
Blow up games. I think it was against Houston. Or no, not against Houston, obviously. I'd have to say it was week 6, I think, is the one where it all happened. You can't really do unless you want to try, but going 3-man stack with those receivers is way more difficult this year.
Yeah,
how do you do it? What's your way of getting leverage if you're playing Colin or Stroud?
If I'm playing Stroud, I think the leverage is going to be probably realistically. You can maybe make a small variation and go like, I don't think Schultz is going to be like leverage per se. I think it's just your one-offs. I don't think that you need to make the stand within the stack. I really don't on a team like that. Sometimes people do that where it's like, okay, I need to be different. Let me just take, you mentioned like Robert. It's like, you could do that, but when he gives you 3 targets and you look and you're just like, why didn't I just go Stroud, Collins, and Schultz like I wanted to? And then maybe I have a different or no run back. I think some, right in chat already, Clayton was mentioning that. Have the strategy of the run back become a little watered down? I don't want to say don't bring a run back, but it's been proven out that you don't always need one. And that's a way to be different as well. Don't have a Colt. Go for an onslaught.
Yeah, I don't think a run back is entirely necessary. Also, if you're running it back and you're doing it with a guy that's projected for like 7-8 fantasy points, it's so difficult to do that because you could find someone in the same price tier with a much better projection. You don't have to do that.
You don't get extra points because they're playing. There's correlation, of course, but yeah. So I think like one of the strongest correlated plays to Stroud this week is going to be, say, like a Michael Pittman.
Mm-hmm. Gotta be the strongest.
It doesn't have to be like that though. Like you can isolate Pittman in non-Stroud lineups, and now if he has an explosive game and Houston plays bad, now you're already starting to shift the pieces of this slate.
Yep. Or just secondary stacks with like a Collins and a Pittman. It doesn't need to be a full out game stack. Mid-tier, Tua in a spot against Jacksonville. This could get interesting for sure. New defensive coordinator in Jacksonville. So that could make things a little bit different. It doesn't matter though. You look at Tyreek Hill against man, against zone. He just destroys all of them. I actually think this team becomes more interesting now. So you have no Odell Beckham. If you look at the receivers on this team, it is Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Now we saw last year with Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane in games, against like Denver, where they had 19 combined touchdowns and all of the yards and put up 75 points. There are going to be games where, the receivers in the stack don't come to fruition, even if they're, even if they score a lot of points. What I find fascinating here, though, is that Jonnu Smith is now your tight end. And you still have Durham Smythe, but we saw last year that Jonnu Smith in that Atlanta offense, because Arthur Smith was a moron. And this is no indictment or criticism of Jonnu Smith. It's more so Arthur Smith, not Jonnu Smith, or Arthur not using Pitts at all or anybody else. Jonnu Smith is one of those guys at 3,500 that I think fits really nicely in Miami stacks this week.
Yeah, so Miami is one of the stacks that's always extremely difficult because of Tyreek. And when you look to him, it's a really tough build traditionally because he's very, very expensive. And if you're taking a +1, a lot of times that's a Waddle, as you mentioned, or a Mostert or an HN. They're also really expensive. And then you're taking Tua most likely. You've spent like 20,000 of a 50,000 cap on 3 players. So this could be a salary relief situation. We'll talk about Trevor Lawrence on the other side of this game. It's a great game to target. I'm not going to be on Tua. I can already tell. Or if I do, it's going to be very limited. Just not the guy. I'll probably have one-offs of Miami players, but I'm not going to be on Tua.
I don't think I will either, but I definitely think I'm getting the Tyreek Hill
Oh
because
yeah, but you can just again, Tua gives you nothing outside of what he's giving you through the air, and it's like if Tyreek has a huge game, Tua will have a nice game maybe, but I think I can still get past him with other quarterbacks.
especially now with how dominant they became in the run game, Tua's upside is capped.
And Tua, I think there's a lot of noise about like how good is Tua and blah blah blah, and I don't think that's super relevant. But when you really look at a lot of his games, you don't see like a huge, like massive outlier games where he has like 6 touchdowns and then he has like pretty serviceable. He's solid, but I really would rather look to some of these higher variance quarterbacks in the mid range.
All right, let's get to it because there's a few I really like here, and I'll tell you right now, I don't think it's going to be Joe Burrow for me, even though he's a huge favorite against New England. We don't even know if Jamar Chase is going to play. First of all, um, so could Joe Burrow be the guy? He could. They could absolutely rout them. The Patriots lost Matthew Judon, and that's huge going to the Falcons. I think Falcons are going to have a nice defense this year. I really do. But their secondary could really struggle. They have a good run defense. I think the Patriots do become a pass funnel. So I'm not scoffing at the idea of Joe Burrow at all. But my guess is that you're looking towards the Kyler Murrays and the Anthony Richardsons in this range, given the upside, given the high totals in these spots. They do stand out to me for sure.
Definitely mobile, unknown, particularly in Richardson's situation. Obviously, we saw glimpses of it, but these are the type of guys, and I just like to do this in general in early season. They may be $8,000 quarterbacks. Like they might be $5,000 quarterbacks too. But when you don't know to that degree, I think there's always utility in targeting them. Obviously, when you look at Richardson, when you're playing at home, I mean, it's early season, so weather isn't nearly as important, but you're never going to have weather, of course, in Indianapolis. I feel really good about him, but I'm bringing in Trevor Lawrence to this. First of all, he grades out really nicely in our projections. I think it's going to be a nice bounce back year for him when he is healthy, slinging it 40 plus times. And I think in Miami, he's going to have to keep pace. I like Trevor Lawrence this year, and I definitely like him at 6,200.
So I don't disagree. The only thing that worries me a little bit is I think this Dolphins secondary looks a lot better than they have in the past, right? So you have Kendall Fuller, Bills, we'll talk about Kyler Murray, but Bills have Jordan Poyer now, or Miami, sorry, Jordan Poyer. Jalen Ramsey should be healthy. This actually looks like not rebuilt, but a much improved secondary. I don't hate Lawrence, though, and the one reason for this, probably you would have gotten there if I didn't, is the fact that there are not expensive pass catchers on this team at all. Like Christian Kirk, 5,500. By the way, you want to talk about kind of a high variance offense early on? Is it going to be Brian Thomas? It could be. And this kid looked good in the preseason. He's looked great throughout camp. Could he be the clear number 2? Could he end up being the number 1? I still think right now, I'm not putting anybody above Kirk as the number 1 on that team.
Ingram.
You could do that. You could put Ingram up there as well. But I think it's, 1 and 1A between who Lawrence is looking towards. But they brought Gabe Davis in too. Gabe Davis is the type of guy that has given us so much promise and then yanked it all away just as you think that he's going to have a great year. If you can't do it with Josh Allen, is he going to be able to do it with Miami? Honestly, I'd have Kirk, Ingram, and Brian Thomas as 1, 2, and 3. I would put Gabe Davis 4 in this stack. It doesn't mean I wouldn't be playing him, but he would be my 4th among these guys in the stack this week for Jacksonville.
Yeah, I love Gabe Davis in the sense that every time you look at his, you can look at, I say this all the time, but it's like the guy averages a pedestrian amount of fantasy points per game. Then it's like, how many 20-point plus outputs does he have a year? And it's like, oh, he has 6. And it's like, wow, that's huge. So it's like, yeah, when he doesn't, he has 0, but I can live with that week after week. And then the final data point for me, all of that concern, Miami's secondary, Miami's at home, Miami this, Miami that. It's a 3-point spread. It's a 3-point spread. So apparently this is supposed to be a very competitive game, and I think it's going to be.
Okay, I like it. I mean, when it all comes down to it, it's Gabe Davis has, averages 10 fantasy points because it's all 20s and 0s.
That's so much better than 10 every week.
For sure. Yeah. I just don't know what his role is going to look like in this offense. Like, where are you at on a guy, Brian Thomas? You're a big college football guy. I mean, he's looked awesome early on, and I think he's going to have an immediate role.
It seems that way. Like you said, I don't think he just automatically supplants Kirk and whatnot, but
No.
obviously, there's and listen, this is not, oh, he's automatically going to be good, but how many LSU wide receivers do we need to see come into the league and look ready to go? And obviously, he's just going to be another one. Neighbors and Jefferson, and it's unlimited amount of them. So, yeah, another guy that, is it crazy to think that in a month, Brian Thomas is 6,600? I don't think so.
Neither do I. And if that's the case, by the way, you're probably going to see a more expensive Trevor Lawrence as well.
That's what I mean. This is all wildly inefficient. And so both ways, Brian Thomas could be 3K because he has no role in the offense and he flames out early. Who knows? But that's good variance that I'm willing to embrace.
Lawrence can run a little bit too.
Yeah, when he's healthy, he reminds me of, I'm not saying that he's better or worse or anything like that, but like with Andrew Luck, like when Andrew Luck was healthy, it was so good, but he was never healthy. And Trevor Lawrence just seems, by week 8, it's just like he's battling 7 different injuries. When he's healthy, he's mobile and he's very effective.
He's also, I mean, that guy battles through anything. I remember we thought he'd be out 4 different weeks last year, all separate injuries. Yeah, I might be exaggerating, but you remember this. And the one game I'm like, well, he's not going to be mobile. It's ugly. They end up putting up 31 against New Orleans. I think this was actually a primetime game. You guys would remember this. And first drive of the game, he has a 26-yard run. So, and that was with the ankle injury.
That's what I mean.
He'll run if he has to. But I like Kyler. I understand that the Bills, McDermott can coach these cornerbacks up no matter who's out there, the secondary in general. All of these guys can be coached up, and he can turn them into a great team. Now, they lost Milano. That's big. They lost Poyer. They did Milano to an injury. They did lose a decent amount of guys. But $6,400 Kyler Murray, to me, still is at the very least intriguing. And I think pairing him with a Trey McBride in this spot, we can talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, but I really like Trey McBride in this spot, especially with the loss of Milano.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a guy, someone that I actually was early to, which was very exciting. Clearly a player, no doubt about it. And not the biggest Arizona guy, not the biggest Kyler guy, but I do think he's a better fantasy quarterback than real life. And he's got, of all the new unknown weapons, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, clearly everyone thinks Marvin Harrison is going to translate pretty quickly because he is not cheap at all. And that's something that we're going to have to live with. But yeah, Kyler can get it done in a lot of different ways. I hope they'll embrace his legs a little more. I never understood that with them. It seems like he only runs when he has to, and there's not a ton of design by that, but it did pick up. It seemed like he got a little more comfortable there, and obviously we only saw him for a little bit, but I'm hoping we see that throughout the season.
Would you, I just pulled it up on Odd Shopper. Okay. By the way, free tools on their Odd Shopper, the live odds page. You can shop any odds across any book for any game line, total, spread, and any player prop you can think of, like every prop out there. Would you like to take a guess at his rushing yard prop this week?
27.5.
Close. 32.5. That's a pretty nice number.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was a little more what I wanted it to be. Because if you said I was right, I would just go to Odd Shopper and just bet the over immediately.
You
But yeah,
hammered his overs on rushing props a lot last year.
I did, and it was just again, I did have a little conflict of what I thought they should do and what they were doing, but there's still left a lot to be in terms of value. So I'm optimistic that they can do some things there. Uh yeah, I know he can't run because he's gonna get killed, but Kyler's an absolute master of sliding and not taking damage. So
Well,
I don't
we
really
saw
worry
that
about that.
2-point conversion.
Yeah, yeah, you just run around till everyone gets tired.
Yeah, we did against Oakland, or I think they were Oakland at the time. Maybe they were Vegas, whatever. Remember it was like a 45-second him just running around.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Uh, Anthony Richardson, 42.5-yard rushing prop.
Think that's more important, mostly because, like, again, there's a lot of unknown there, and I lean to the books. They always know more. So they're saying that clearly Indy is gonna go right back. I mean, we saw him what 3.5 games.
Yeah,
And
right.
in the games that he was pretty damn active. So maybe he can get if he gets 10 carries a game, this guy's gonna be an absolute superstar for fantasy.
How do you rank the mid range and the top tier if you were to group them all together this week?
Uh I would go Allen, Lawrence, Richardson.
Really, Lawrence second.
Yeah, I like Trevor Lawrence a lot.
Okay, I can appreciate that. I would go Allen. Like I think Allen has to be first here.
Yeah, he does.
Allen, Richardson, Murray,
Yeah.
Kyler. Yeah. Running backs? Actually, no, we didn't talk low tier. What about Baker Mayfield against Washington? What if the secondary is still as bad as they look? I know people hate playing Baker Mayfield. Everyone's going to want to play Sam Darnold this week, which is interesting to me because while the Giants secondary has a lot to be desired and a ton of question marks, they brought Brian Burns in. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. Like this team is potentially going to have a really nasty pass rush. Like a real, and you know as well as I do that if you are a team that has a good pass rush, it can shield a lot of the issues on their secondary.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of value on this court. I mean, value is relative term, but you have 5K quarterbacks up and down the list that people are going to go to. I think Baker makes a lot of sense. I actually think that might be an undervalued spot because naturally, I think there's always an inclination for people to want to play, the new shiny new toy. The guy, people are going to play Caleb Williams. There's no doubt about it. He projects as a very popular choice so far in there. Then you mentioned Darnold. I don't know. For me, Baker would be the preferred option. I don't know what to do. I'll say it right now. I don't know what to do with Justin Herbert. I don't know how much he will be stifled by a change in philosophy. Maybe it helps him efficiency wise, but I also do think realistically it's got to hurt him knowing what Harbaugh wants to do.
I probably lay off Herbert this week, but I have some interest in this team in general. Like I'm betting Gus Edwards anytime touchdown at plus 260. Threw that in the marketplace in the premium Discord. I have because you have Dobbins at plus 160, Gus Edwards at plus 260, coming off a 13 rushing touchdown season. I just think why would you not go back to him as at least the early goal line back to see what he can do? And then the problem is you have Greg Roman, who former offensive coordinator for the Ravens, loves to run the football. Harbaugh's going to win any way he can, but they're going to try to run. The Raiders have a very good, they have very good pass rush, great edge rushers. So I don't know. Like I do, and Herbert's dealing with the injury, the plantar fascia. So with all of that, and I think, by the way, I think Herbert's going to be fine. You want to talk about a warrior? This dude will play through anything if he can, really will. But ultimately, I don't really want to take risks on Edwards and J.K. Dobbins in week one. I don't know if that makes any sense. And with Herbert, if I were to do it, I'm probably looking Glad McConkey, but even early, he only got a few snaps in the preseason, but he wasn't playing in 3 receiver sets. So who knows what that looks like. And then you're talking about Palmer, I don't know. This team just feels really difficult to figure out early on. And the problem for me is I'm not sure the ceiling is there early on anyway for me to run those risks. Like Quentin Johnson, DJ Shark, Joshua Palmer, Ladd McConkey at tight end. Who knows? Who knows what that's going to look like? And sometimes it's fun to take shots on teams like that when they're cheap. The Houston Texans were the perfect example last season, but also the Chargers might just look to run it 40 times in this game. That's what I have concerns about.
That's an unknown that I also have concerns, and the opportunity cost is higher than it would seem. Like if there were no pay down options and I wanted to build differently, I would say, okay, maybe I can do it. But Baker, Caleb, Daniels, Darnold, if you want to pay down at quarterback, you can pay down at quarterback at a lot. Honestly, you know me, Danny Dimes, like I'll do it. I do it all the time.
Absolutely.
So I worry about Herbert in that sense. It's not just, is he going to be good or bad? Is he going to be good? If yes, is he going to be better than the 5 other pay down options? Because you only get one quarterback.
I think Daniel Jones is actually a great cheap option this week.
Always, my man.
He can run. He looked awful in that preseason game. He played the entire first half in, I think, week 2, Ben, and threw a pick 6, got picked off again. I mean, it wasn't good. But I don't really care too much about that. It was his first action in what? Close to a calendar year. League Neighbors is legit. They have, if you're playing him, you're playing with Neighbors for sure, right? I don't know where you are on that, but I'm not playing Jones without him, without a 5,900 League Neighbors.
Yeah, I would. It's hard to really argue that unless you get like really wonky. But no, I think that's kind of what you're doing. But yeah, I think just in general, I mean, this is like the Jameis Winston. When you do really crazy things and some stupid things, it overarches your fantasy value because it's like, oh, Danny Dimes, he sucks. And it's like, even if that's true, I will sign up for him throwing 2 pick sixes in this game. I would welcome that. That's fine. That's not a problem. That's -2.
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's a big problem for them, not for me.
And then he has to throw.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it doesn't work like that. Now, yes, if later in the season he's playing bad and he gets benched, I don't see any way that he's on that short of a leash. They're not going to derail the season in week 1.
The only question now is, does he run? Because he could pre-injury.
That's an unknown. If he can't run, then that's going to change the equation. But I think he can.
If he can't run, I would want nothing to do with him.
That's what I mean. But we don't know that. We just don't know.
We're projecting Baker Mayfield for 3% ownership right now. Look, I'm not saying he's an elite play this week, but I'm not discounting. Like if that matchup is, if Washington still in week 1 has not improved immensely, like exponential improvement, then this is going to be a killer spot for Baker Mayfield. I really think so. Like you're talking about a Washington team that last season allowed 262 passing yards per game. They were god awful in the passing game, right? There was not a single redeeming quality about this secondary, and they're not really they haven't really made any significant improvements as far as personnel. Matter of fact, personnel wise, I think they probably got worse. 39 passing touchdowns allowed, most in the league, 7.7 yards per attempt. Just go down the list. If they still stink, Baker Mayfield at 3% owned could look really interesting.
Definitely. No doubt about it. I mean, if he's 3%, I can guarantee I'll be significantly over.
What's Mike Evans' ownership? 5%?
Yeah, 5%, 5.3%.
Godwin at 9%. I would actually like Evans more because they use him more on deep balls, and that's where Washington really struggled last year. But yeah. So any other cheap options you want to talk about?
No, I mean, we'll see what materializes as the data matures on Sunday. But as a first look, I think I kind of know what I want to do here.
I think Bo Nix is going to be my guy this year, just not in week 1 in Seattle.
That's a
You
tough
know,
spot.
they brought a coach in that's like one of the best defensive coaches, phenomenal. And they have a good secondary. You got the 12th man. So I'm out on Knicks this week, but I can't wait for the first good matchup where nobody wants to play him. And I can jam Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims in there. That's going to happen, dude. It's going to happen.
What a time to be alive.
And Sam Darnold, I would put Darnold behind Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones this week.
Yeah, so would I.
It's a tough spot. Running backs?
Let's talk running backs for sure.
All right. And by the way, for those of you guys who joined in late and didn't hear it, first week of all of our tools, if you're looking at the NFL Core Weekly package, $1, $1. Everything that we have, even the pre-contest simulator, the contest simulator, the lineup simulator, the contest generator. With the Core, you're doing up to 1,000 lineups, but still, the single lineup sim, brand new. Greg and I are going to have an entire strategy show on that. You will absolutely love this tool. You go in, you hand build your lineup, and then you get instant feedback because we're simming your lineup against the field. So we've taken the sims, which are the future of DFS, combined it with the hand builders style, and created an absolute wet dream bed for hand builders who actually want to evolve with the times in DFS. Also, everything you need for prize picks, underdog, DraftKings, pick six, ownership, top stacks tool, boom bust tool, lineup, everything for NFL for the entirety of the first week is $1. Links to that in the description and in the chat. And mind you, as you're doing this, you're getting Thursday night, Friday night, all of Sunday, every single slate. We have tools for everything. Sunday night and Monday night. Week one, perfect time to check them out. We think you're going to love it. Jump into the Discord and say what's up while you're at it, by the way. All right. At running back, tell me I'm wrong here because I'm happy to listen. I don't know if I want to pay the premium on Jonathan Taylor or Bijan Robinson this week.
Yeah, I mean, so Bijan's going to be fascinating because everybody seems, and I'm guilty of this too, everyone likes him and hated his situation and his role, and it seems like that's been alleviated. So there's naturally going to be a lot of interest there, and I get it. I absolutely get that. But there are still a lot of backs, and just in week one, the balance build really jumped out to me. There's guys in the 6K range that we're going to talk about that I like quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to knock Bijan. I definitely plan to have him. If I had to pick one, I would have him over Jonathan Taylor. But in general, I think you're going to see effective lineups that grade out positively in our sims that don't have either of them.
Me too. And yeah, he's the fourth highest owned running back right now in our tools, 14%. But nothing against Bijan Robinson. I think he's awesome, just a supreme talent. How often is Tyler Algier going to be worked into this though? Like, is he still going to have a significant role?
No, I mean, people think no, but
they've said that he will. So I don't know. Maybe that's just coach speak and bullshit. I don't know. Zach Robinson's the new offensive coordinator there. He comes from under Sean McVay, right? Was your quarterbacks and passing game coordinator for the Rams. I love the passing attack for Atlanta this season. I really do. I love it. I'll take hate for this, Ben. I can stomach it. I love Kyle Pitts this year.
He's the other one. I mean, everybody I targeted Kyle Pitts through all the bad times, so I absolutely expect big things. I think they can unlock a lot of it, but again, you've got. I mean, we're going to talk about Rachaad White. We're going to talk about Alvin Kamara. Chuba, there are names, and they're going to be somewhat popular, but there's definitely names in it. What I would say is a pretty deep running back pool this week.
It is deep. It's very deep, as a matter of fact. You didn't even mention James Cook against Arizona. Like, I think James Cook is a great play this week if you're not going with the app. Like, that's actually one of those spots where, I wouldn't do it because Allen has the rushing upside. I was going to say Kincaid and Cook. I don't think that plays too well. But I do like James Cook.
You could go Kincaid and Cook without Josh Allen, though, for sure.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. But it worries me because Josh Allen can snipe those touchdowns so easily.
Yeah. But, if he doesn't, it boxes out Josh Allen's ceiling.
It's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. It's not crazy. James Cook, I think, is going to get a ton of work this year. I really do. And I know McDermott is always kind of he's similar to what you would get, not to the same degree as like a McVay, where it's Cam Akers, and Akers looks great to end the season, and then has nothing the following year, and by week 2 or 3, it's Kyron Williams backfield. I wouldn't be surprised if Kyron Williams isn't the 20 touch guy this year. Wouldn't shock me at all. McDermott has some of those tendencies, but I really like James Cook this week. They have a very high total. Let's see, what's the implied total for Buffalo?
Got to be pretty healthy.
I think it's like 28 last I looked.
I mean, they're upwards of a 6. They're like 6-point favorite.
Yep. So 27.5 is the highest on the slate of any team. So I guess at this rate, who gives a shit about Diggs and Gabe Davis, right? They still have the highest total of any team in a great matchup. James Cook might be my favorite running back on this slate. I like Alvin Kamara. The issue I have with Kamara, and I want you to speak to this, and you guys in chat, we're reading the comments and we'll hit on them as well. Carolina allowed the fewest receiving yards to opposing running backs last year. Now, let's be very clear. That wasn't because they were great at limiting pass catching running backs, because no team had to throw the ball to their running back, right? Like, they allowed the fewest rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks as well. Not because they couldn't run on them. And by the way, they don't have Brian Burns anymore either, so this team could be a disaster. But because you didn't need to. I think they take a step forward offensively. I do. You have Dave Canales in there. You have new coaching staff. Last year was terrible. Frank Reich just ran them into the ground. So did everyone else before him. Bryce Young can only move upwards. He can't get any worse. I think Deontay Johnson, and you probably agree, is a big piece, a big addition to this team. The guy crushes man coverage. He gets open as good as any receiver in football. And his drops issues are overblown, but they don't have a strong ground game. It's a really tough matchup against this front seven for the Saints. My issue with Alvin Kamara is if you're only getting him the ball on the ground and he's not picking up those big numbers through the air, those games generally don't end well for him. And you have Taysom Hill who can vulture touchdowns at the goal line.
There's a lot of moving parts with this game and with this team, both teams. Like, I don't think it's a given, and it's only 1 week, so I'm not drawing anything regardless. But like, I think that Bryce Young could be improved this year, and it could give them a little more utility, and maybe that has repercussions. But yeah, Kamara's the guy that we'll probably spend the most time on in this game, and rightfully so. It really just comes down to who is Alvin Kamara at this point, because if he is not a prolific pass catcher, he's not someone that I'm going to be as interested in. I mean, his 10 to 12 carries are not going to get it done. Now, when you have 10 to 12 carries and 10 to 12 targets, your floor is absolutely massive, and then touchdown equity is less important. So I get it. He's going to be popular. He's probably cash viable, but I want to see, 6, 8, 12 targets in some of these games for him.
And you remember last year, his biggest games by far were when they were playing from behind, and he had 10 points on receptions alone.
And that's the key with him.
We had a comment from Einsteinium. Are you guys worried, concerned about James Cook being that guy over Josh Allen? I think they coexist perfectly fine. Plus, James Cook was actually involved as a pass catcher last year, and probably more this year. Will said probably because everyone was lighting them up rushing, referring to Carolina. That's exactly what it was. They did it. They didn't need to throw a ton. They got gouged, just completely crushed on the ground. The Carolina Panthers. That's what happened. Running back still just DraftKings points per game. Carolina gave up the 6th most. And as far as rushing yards go, they gave up the 4th or 5th most. So yeah. I like James Cook over Kamara. I know that's a contrarian take right now, but that's where I'm at. I think I like Aaron Jones ahead of him too, but I will die on the Aaron Jones hill. You could exhume me from the grave, Ben, and you could bring me back to life, and I would climb right back the Aaron Jones hill to die again. I just love Aaron Jones every time, and at 6,500, if this guy's healthy, I still think he's good. I still think that Sam Darnold's going to use him heavily in the passing game, especially with the pressure coming in on the outside from the Giants. I'm always on board going back to Aaron Jones. I still like him.
Yeah, it's your guy. I get it. And he's in a very crowded range. So you look at the mid sixes. It's a nice spot for him because of the Kamara situation. Some of these other guys, Rashad White, he's not gonna say he's gonna be lost, but he's certainly not gonna be the focal point of a lot of people.
So then where do you look towards in this mid range? Because to me, I think Aaron Jones looks good. I think James Cook looks great. Devon HN is weird with Raheem Mostert, but I'd still prefer him over Mostert. What about Mixon and Kenneth Walker?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mixon's very interesting just in the fact that it's a prolific offense, and I think most people assume it's going to be Stroud and the pass catchers. What if Mixon, again, I say this all the time. What if there's pass interference in the end zone 3 times and Mixon has 3 1-yard touchdowns? That stuff happens. It's not likely, but like sometimes the touchdown variance goes the way of one player. And a guy like Mixon not only could be lucrative, he could kill Stroud stacks at the same time. So I look at that. Uh, I think there are some interesting situations with Chicago. I know we didn't spend a ton of time on Caleb Williams, but what does that offense look like? How does that pan out? Are there other players that we want to look to on the other side of that ball, particularly like a guy like Tony Pollard, who I always liked? I think that's just an interesting game, and those are going to be the targets maybe in tournaments that I go to that won't be super popular.
Give me your top mid range and top tier plays if you were to combine them like we did with quarterback.
Yeah, so I think it would still be all in all, even after all that, it still would be Bijan 1. But I think that's mostly in line with what people are looking to. And then honestly, Kamara would be 2. And I'm gonna take a shot for my third guy. I know you like Aaron Jones. I'm gonna put Pollard in there.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance that he's just really, really good. Simple as that. Just he's
You're
a
not
real
worried
good
about
player.
Tajay Spears?
I am worried a little about it, but I think there's a lot of variance in that situation. In the sense, like, listen, Tony Pollard was never, he had to worry about all sorts of nonsense in Dallas. So it's not like a new environment where it's going from like, oh, now he has to compete with other guys. Like he was dealing with that, and I think Tajay Spears is a pretty damn good player. But I also think there's a chance that they can coexist and that Pollard could have some real upside.
Okay. Would you agree with me that the reason that Bijan and Jonathan Taylor aren't stellar to me this week is only because I think you could get similar production, if not the same production from the mid range.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, each slate is individualized like that.
I would go Cook. I think I'd probably still have to put Rashad White next. Going to be interested to see Bucky Irvin's role this year, though. But I would go probably Rashad White, then Bijan, then Aaron Jones. I could, you know what? I could just be way off. I don't love Kamara at 20+% ownership this week.
I mean, it's a good stand to make if you're not high on him because you'll get real leverage on other lineups. He'll be
How high are you
30% in small fields.
How high are you on Chuba Hubbard?
Not that higher in life than I am in this specific situation. I think he's got serious volume potential, but I worry a little about what's going on as my Slack call rings. But yeah, not super high on Chuba.
Lower tier. Moss. I mean, Zach Moss and Chase Brown. That's the one I don't know what to do with those guys because they're huge. They're almost double-digit favorites. And I don't know how to handle this. It might just be a situation where I play both of them, not in the same lineup, or neither of them. Like I don't have a firm read on this at all. Do you? And we have Moss at 2% ownership, and we have Chase Brown at 11%. So he's way more popular than Moss, even though it's entirely possible that Moss is the first and second, the early down back and the goal line back early on. I don't know what to do here.
I don't really either. And, if this was a 2-game Monday Night Football slate or a Thanksgiving slate, I'd probably make some strong decisions. I think I'm going to let other people try to hero that. And if someone does and they get rewarded, more power to them. But there's still 12 games. I'm not really looking to get crazy there. Maybe I get a piece or two, but nothing massive.
One guy that I will be keeping a close watch on early in the year is Javonte Williams. Looked insanely, I talked to you about this, looked really explosive in the preseason, looked fully healthy again. Mind you, this is a guy that came back quickly from blowing his entire knee out as a rookie. I just don't know if I want it against Seattle in week 1 with a rookie quarterback. Jerome Ford against Dallas. No Nick Chubb for at least the first 4 weeks. I suppose that's mildly interesting. I think what I end up doing, honestly, Ben, with some of these cheap options is just kind of rotating through them instead of taking a stand. There isn't one guy down there that I want to take a massive stand on right now, from Ford to Chase Brown to Zach Moss, Zamir White against the Chargers. I'm surprised that Zamir White isn't getting more ownership, only because he could actually be a definitive bell cow if they decide to use him that way. Like, there's nothing. Alexander Madison was dog shit last year for Minnesota. I mean, as bad as you could possibly get.
Yeah, again, I think we're going to see some of those situations organically work themselves out. I always weigh week 1 though with like, just like any week, really. I shouldn't just say week 1, risk versus reward. Like, how dangerous is this? And then if I'm right, if you tell me I'm right and the upside is 30 points, 40
Right.
points, I'll seriously do it, even if I know I'm going to be wrong a large majority of the time. If you tell me that I get it right and my reward is a solid play, I'm not spending the time and the hero call and the bandwidth when there are 5 pivots that I feel more confident in. So some of these places, I think there's like Cincinnati, I think is a decent example of that. Even if you get it right, is one of those guys winning tournaments this week? If the answer is probably not, I'm not sure I want to go there.
That's a good way to, that's a very fair way to look at it. Yeah. That's it. You're right. So then if you had to rank your favorite cheap running backs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all relative in terms of like, what is cheap.
Sub 6K.
So okay, sub 6K. I still think that just by default, because I don't like a lot down there, that Hubbard's got to be involved at least. I mean, he's
Yeah.
sub 55, and that's a really nice price. And then you look at that. I think Jalen Warren's interesting. It's an interesting game in general. I think Pittsburgh's a high variance team with what they've brought in, what they've kind of expended and whatnot. I kind of like him as a player, and he's another guy that I think's price could be impacted. But looking at the slate, I liked a lot of pay down quarterbacks. One of the luxuries of that is I don't anticipate having a lot of pay down running backs.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. You don't think you'd go too low there?
Because it's not even that, it's not like wide receiver where it's like, oh, I'm going to punt with a 4K guy because I don't have a 7K guy. You can spend another $800 and get to the
That's a
Kamara
great
range.
point. Yeah.
It's not that big of a savings.
There is a really livable mid-range there for sure. Yeah.
100%.
I would go, yeah, I think Hubbard has to be. I don't love him though, because they have such a low total. Zamir White, I think, is actually very viable because in week 1, I'm willing to take some risks that a guy might just be, right? Like, might just be the guy. What if he sees 20 touches at 5,700? He doesn't need to be great. And then between Moss and Brown, Brown's $800 cheaper. Maybe Brown gets a lot of work in this game. I think he's nice too. Rico Dowdle, I think, probably takes this backfield over sooner than later. I don't want to touch him versus Cleveland, though, and I would assume you agree.
Yes, strongly agree.
All right, wide receivers. We don't have to spend as much time here because we usually cover a lot of wide receiver when we talk quarterbacks and just overall stacks. But let's dive into it. And we got 500 people watching with us. Really appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out to open up the season, making this your destination for DFS NFL. Means a lot. And we've been doing this a long time now. 135 thumbs up. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. If you haven't done so yet, greatly appreciated. I should mention one thing though, and I promise you will appreciate me mentioning this. If you haven't been around since last season and you weren't playing MLB and you're not using the stochastic avatar, we completely revamped the avatar system. I spent a lot of time revamping this to make it literally as good as humanly possible, better than any other site out there, hands unquestionably. If you go to stochastic.com/HOF, Download any of those 6 beautiful new avatars. Use it wherever it is you play. FanDuel, DraftKings, Owner's Box, Yahoo, doesn't matter. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and you are getting, okay, not just 1, 2, 3. You can win more than once in a calendar year. All you got to do is tweet your wins to us. It's Stochastic HOF. Now you might say, what do I win? Well, first time winner within a calendar year, free month of any single sports sims package, $200 value. So you want NFL for the whole month, every tool we have, $200, it's yours. Win again, another month of that, plus a week of another sport. So say it's basketball season, you got a full free month of football, $200 value, plus a free week of all of our NBA tools. And a third win, doesn't matter if it's a $100 win either, and a 25-cent entry. All access sims, $550 value. And the crowning, the crown jewel here, get a 20K win, and you get the beautiful custom engraved stochastic ring in a spinning display case with your name, your username, the amount you won, the date, the contest, all engraved in there. Beautiful case. You can see them on Twitter. Jordan can pull one up as well. Sent straight to you to commemorate your big win. A lot of different things we're doing here. And of course, you win the Millie, you're getting a year of everything, plus something else that I won't tell you about until it happens because it's special and I've got it planned. But yeah, I mean, no better way to reward yourself this season than just rocking the avatar. No matter how much you win, as long as it's top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, you can win a bunch of times and get, up to basically $1,000 plus in tools and content and all of that stuff. So check it out. All right. Tyreek Hill, I'm going to give it to, I'll give it to you straight here, Ben. Tyreek Hill up top is my favorite receiver. Pretty easy for me. I still think Justin Jefferson is very viable. I worry a bit about that Minnesota offensive line against that pass rush for the Giants. But I'm so intrigued by Devontae Adams and Mike Evans in that low to mid 7K range.
Yeah, I mean, it goes hand in hand with what we talked about at quarterback. If Baker isn't getting a lot of love, by extension, some of the stacks are not going to get a lot of love, and there'll be one-offs of these Tampa Bay receivers, but I'm with you. I think people want to play Tyreek, and they should. I don't know what to make of some of these other guys. You've got, again, Marvin Harrison Jr. is up there, and I don't know what to really make of him right off the bat. That's a lofty tag, but Tyreek, I think, is there's no safe. I never like to say the word safe because there is no safe, but I expect him to be very popular, and the raw points that he produces are so electric. And I'll have money. That's the other thing. My one-offs, I have a feeling, gonna be spending up. Now, Tyreek might be the highest owned player on the slate. If Jefferson's a third of the ownership, probably gonna look to pivot here and there. But it's also, you mentioned, we got to see what's up with Chase. He'll be fascinatingly low owned if we get no word and he's just active.
That would be, yeah.
He'll be like 5% owned, if that.
That happened with him before early in the season, actually.
I like those spots.
There was a comment, check the weather in Miami from MT Savage. Yeah, I saw it. I'm not particularly, I don't look at anything for weather this early in the week.
Tuesday.
Yeah, not yet. Not yet. But we have plenty more shows. And Ben and I will be here Sunday with you for what, almost 2 hours?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Sundays.
All right, so are you with me that those guys interest you, or are you more okay? So for me, Tyreek Hill, number one. I don't love CeeDee Lamb in this spot, but anytime, if anyone wanted to make the argument to me that CeeDee Lamb, maybe doesn't get ownership in a really difficult matchup in a low scoring game, so they're playing him, you're never going to hear me fight you on that ever. He's just that good. But the only problem here is Tyreek Hill's ownership. Once I start looking at a 5% Mike Evans, Devontae Adams is 4%. Devontae Adams at 4% might be a hill I'm willing to die on this week. I know Gardner Minshew isn't great, but even Aiden O'Connell got Adams the ball last year. Adams is maybe the best route runner in football. I think it's 4%, man. He's so interesting.
I mean, we've seen it. He has 20 target upside at times. That's not even hyperbole. It's true. So so the thing here that's nice, again, is that you're definitely going to have some money to spend, and you've got those options on aggressive lineup. Sure, I don't mind the pivot, but at the same time, If I go to a low owned stack, I'll just use Tyreek and it'll be fine.
Okay, I get it. Maybe I'm off on Adams, but the ownership there is so low. We talked about Houston. Any other mid-range spots that stand out to you at wide receiver? Harrison's in there, 7,200 for a rookie in his first game. Keenan Allen, Michael Pittman Jr., Stephon Diggs, Olave against Carolina's interesting. We'll see J.C. Horn returning from injury, how he plays. DJ Moore, Amari Cooper. What about those guys all the way down to 6K?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some names there. Pittman's probably the one that stands out. I mentioned, he's going to be the bring back in Stroud. He gets hit in a lot of different areas. He'll be the bring back for Stroud. He'll be the pairing with Richardson. He'll also be a one-off for certain people. You got Drake London. We talked about Pitts. We talked about Bijan. What about Drake London? He's another guy in a Falcons offense that I think should be improved. You've got T. Higgins, who will obviously get a big boost if Chase sits, no doubt about it. And then you mentioned if you played Daniel Jones, Malik Neighbors, 59. These are three guys right in the firm mid range that I'm on board with right off the bat.
Yeah, well, dude,
What?
Drake London, Kirk Cousins. If Kirk Cousins can do what he did in Minnesota, London and Pitts are going to have huge years.
I don't know why he wouldn't.
Yeah,
Honestly,
he actually has better talent overall. Overall, far better defense just to set them up. Good field position, right? Far better defense. I do think so. Atlanta's defense, I think, is going to be good. Really nice offensive line in Atlanta. At least, at the very least, top 15, but I'd say top 10 probably. Top 12. Pitts, London, Bijan, a good offensive coordinator. I'm with you. I don't
he's in a dome. Like
in
he
a
plays in a
dome?
dome again. It's not a bad situation. So yeah.
I like Olave too. I like Olave here because if Kamara ends up being super high on Olave, we got at 7% right now. If Kamara just ends up being the guy that everyone gravitates towards there, it could be a big game for Olave at 6,600.
I mean, yeah, he's a big time player. It's an offense that's very, very, very frustrating. New Orleans is just a frustrating team. A lot of ways to cannibalize, but it's still Chris Olave, 66. Price is fair. No firm take. If he shows up in my sim runs, I'd be glad to have him.
Well, I've been very curious to get your take on some of these sub 6K guys, so let's do it.
Yeah, there's names too.
Neighbors at 5,900, Godwin at 58. George Pickens last year with no quarterbacking whatsoever had 1,200 yards. People forget they made. How did that team make the playoffs last year?
I don't know.
But Pickens has massive ceiling, also a super low floor. And Wilson and Fields look terrible in the preseason. It's Wilson, but McLaurin, Jahan Dotson's gone. McLaurin has Tampa Bay. Christian Kirk, 5,500 against Miami. I'm going to be very, very, very active in this range. Even Deontay Johnson at 5,300. I anticipate being very active in this range this week.
Yeah, so do I. You mentioned mostly at the end there, the guys that I'm really honing in on: Christian Kirk, great extension of Trevor Lawrence for me. Khalil Shakir, we talked about him at the beginning. If you do go to Josh Allen, he'll factor in. Terry McLaurin's probably my favorite guy to target this week in and week out. I love that situation. I thought he had an awful raw deal, touchdown variance last year, and that's a great game environment. So you've got names in the fives. I'm gonna have no problem landing there. Just really gonna be extension of my quarterbacks for a lot of them. Even a guy like Tyler Lockett, I don't think is crazy
Against Denver. Yeah, well, that Denver secondary, outside of Patrick Surtain, they're in full rebuild mode. Maybe you're on to something. Maybe Lockett and Jackson and Jigba are the guys that we should actually be looking at there.
And again, that's not going to be a spot I think people are going to gravitate towards. Fine matchup. Obviously, we saw real promise at times from Geno, and if Metcalf draws the worst of it, I'd be happy to have Lockett.
Jacoby Myers is 5K against the suspect defense for the Chargers. Joshua Palmer, if he does end up being that guy, Joshua Palmer could be a great play this week at 5,200 against the Raiders. I don't think we have any limitations at all on some of these cheap guys. I'm surprised right now that we have Ladd McConkey higher owned than Palmer. I love Ladd McConkey coming into this season, but I still think I like Palmer better at a slight increase in price. We have Roma Dunze at 12%, Ben, as the 5th highest owned receiver.
The product of Caleb. Like if Caleb Williams is that popular, it has to be him.
How much do you like Williams this week then?
Not a lot.
Me neither.
Not a fan. Big Justin Fields fan over here. Maybe I'm just bitter.
Not if you. Wow. Yeah, this is crazy how popular the Bears pass catchers are in general. DJ Moore is like the 6th highest.
Yeah, none of this is intriguing to me. Not saying I'm just blanking them off the slate, but no, not where I think they should be.
It wasn't one of the first places I looked either. Khalil Shakir's 5,100. I'm not going to belabor the point here. This 5 to 5,900 range is low, absolutely stacked.
You could easily have 3 guys from the 5s and be fine.
I was going to ask you if that's an approach that you would consider taking.
Yeah, because the build clearly is if you really like Jonathan Taylor and Bijan, no one's going to do that. You double up with the top 2 running backs. You pepper 3 5K. You take your favorite stack and you pair them. Lawrence, Kirk, and 2 other 5Ks. You have double big time running backs. You have a good tight end and a good defense, and it's a cool lineup.
Yeah, even $4,700 Brian Thomas isn't crazy. You know, some of these guys down here, if you're stacking Atlanta, you have a $4,200 Darnell Mooney. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a ton. But I will say, once you get below 5K, it gets pretty ugly pretty quick.
Yeah, but I don't think I really don't even know why you would do that, honestly. Not saying you can't,
necessary at all.
I really don't.
Okay. Tight ends, Trey McBride, Hawkinson's out. For me, it's actually pretty easy up top. And I will say I have no problem going north of 5K this week at tight end. Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, and Evan Ingram, to me, are all stellar tight end options this week.
Yeah, because you could legitimately argue they're the focal points of those offenses.
Correct. Kincaid, definitely. Who knows? McBride might be a 10 target guy early in the season, even though you have Marvin Harris. Like, what if the offense is just heavily concentrated between those 2 guys and Wilson isn't super involved and, you know, Connor's slow, getting older? What if it just so happens that you end up having, hear me out, by week 4, we find out that this is one of the most heavily concentrated offenses in the league between Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr.
It's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible. So again, tight end, some of these guys are going to be legitimate number 1 targets on their teams. And for that reason, I'm fine spending up on really any of those 3. Those 3 stand out. And I think another cool build would be, what if you take 2 of them?
Very doable. Well, yeah, because Kincaid and McBride could both have huge games.
Huge. Yeah, absolutely.
The only argument I'd make against that is I think in week 1, wide receivers are the most underpriced they'll be all season.
Yeah, but most likely when I think about how my lineups are going to look in terms of who would be in my flex, it will most likely be a wide receiver followed by a tight end followed by a running back.
Yeah, and if you're not including like game time and you're just building it out from who you want the most to lead, it's going to be the 5K receivers in that flex spot.
Yeah.
Ingram, the highest owned right now. Pitts is up there. I have no issues with Pitts at all in this spot, 4,600. I'll go right back to the well. I'm only going to spend a minute on tight end here because it's pretty easy for me, at least right now. Chiga Okonkwo is very popular. I don't love it. And there's rumors that he's going to be in like a timeshare, which is just gross. A tight end timeshare in Tennessee. Yeah, just as what's that?
Yeah, that doesn't sound promising.
Well, not with Will Levis as your quarterback and also having DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. I'm highly uninterested there. So to me, I would say it looks like this. 4 guys. And I want to get your thoughts. Ingram, Kincaid, McBride, Pitts. And if you sprinkled in some Ferguson, maybe David Njoku, you know, those type of guys, I don't hate it. But I just, or a Dalton Schultz. But those 4 guys I like head and shoulders above everybody else.
Not going to argue with really any of that. You mentioned at the beginning a guy like Jonnu Smith. I think it's kind of interesting to be different, attached to Miami or something like that. Mike Gesicki, those type. But you're now talking about the opposite concept of, okay, he's my fifth option on offense. Can I take advantage of my 4 or 5 targets? Not 15 targets for Kyle Pitts or something crazy like that. So I'm not gonna, again, unless I need to, I don't see the need to really dig into these hero calls at a position like this when there are guys that I think stand above the rest.
So you think we'll still easily be able to build lineups without having to go fully into the dumpster and get these like 3K guys and 4K RBs and 3K wide receivers?
I think it depends on your stack, but yes, if you're not going to like Houston or Josh Allen or Miami, I don't see a problem at all.
All right. Last thing I'll say at tight end is we have people talking, PK Delta talking about Ertz, the DK experience saying Sinnett's going to get double-digit points. That's all you guys. Not going to hate you for it, but I don't anticipate myself trying to figure out the tight end rotation and opportunities for Washington in week 1 with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, same. I mean, again, different build, but not something I'm super interested in at first look here.
We do it every week to close out the show. Favorite defense under 3K. Meaningless, but it's really just our way of saying, hey, you don't have to pay up. There might be something down there. And as always, again, guys, full week of all of our NFL tools for $1 single all week, every game, every slate, every day. Link in the description and in chat. And if you're not rocking that Hall of Fame or that stochastic avatar, stochastic.com/HOF gets you insanely rewarded when you win. All you do is tweet us your wins at stochastic HOF. Go check the page out for yourself. You'll see what I'm talking about. Give me a defense under 3K, Ben. I have one.
It's pretty bad. I think the pretty easy answer would be the Chargers of the bunch. Broncos.
Yeah.
Broncos. 25.
But yeah, or
Mega Mind Genius is Indy. I'll say that. That's the genius one.
Man, I was hoping so bad you'd go Tennessee against Chicago.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't really see that, to be honest, but the Indy one probably fascinates me more because no one's going to do that.
Derek Carr stinks. Would you play the Panthers?
You could. I don't know. There's in New Orleans is kind of a weird situation, and the Panthers defense. Burns is like you. That's not a small thing.
No, and Thibodeau's nasty.
So it's like, I don't know. I worry about that a little bit.
Makes you like the Giants against Minnesota.
Giants will be better.
Yeah,
should be better.
Well, we are officially back. You guys are the best. We appreciate you. We'll streamline this a little bit more in the future. I know you had to be out of, it just wasn't happening today, dude. I'm sorry. I tried.
Killed me, but that's fine.
What's that?
Nothing. I'm kidding.
What'd you say?
I said you killed me. You missed the window. I have so much stuff that I'm behind here. Makeup time,
man. You should have pushed it back. You knew what you were getting into.
I did push it back. I already did that.
Well, thanks to all the super chats. You guys hanging out. We will see you back here for the next one. Strategy show tomorrow. All throughout the week, we've got you covered. Check out all of Ben's bets, all of mine, everything over on the Odd Shopper channel as well. And check out our brand new marketplace. All of the picks, all of the premium content at a really, really good price. If you're betting on top of DFS, check us out there as well. Have a great rest of the day, guys. Peace.